Hi, everyone. This is Let's Discuss a Paper right after reading it. And in this journal club, we picked up the paper and started reading it. And then now we are going to start discussing. Today we have two people, Changshen and me. Changshen, can you introduce yourself?
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Tian Chen, and I'm currently a PhD student at Monash University, Australia.
Okay, thank you, Changshen. I am Yota Kaoshima. I'm doing research engineer in Japan. And today we are gonna read a paper published in 2014. So it's already about 10 years ago,
Oh,
right?
mm,
Yeah. But I was interested in this study, so we're gonna discuss this paper. And the title is Using Multivariate Decoding to Go Beyond Contrastive Analysis in Consciousness Research by Sandberg et al. Again, 2014, Frontiers in Psychology. And as usual, before starting the discussion, I will give you a brief summary of this paper. Okay, so in consciousness research, this contrastive analysis is just widespread. So the idea is that they compare neural activities from unconscious perception with neural activities from conscious perception. So by doing that, we should be able to see the differences that related to so-called neural correlates of consciousness. So the activity is something to do with conscious perceptions. And that's a kind of, I think, still widely used, even though now is 2023, but some papers still using it. And it's one of the major approach. This paper saying that we should need to think about alternative approach because the contrastive analysis have several issues. Of course, over the last decades, these issues started to be addressed by using a novel experimental paradigm. But they are saying that these issues can be addressed by using multivariate decoding. So here, multivariate decoding means that basically use the large amount of brain data to decode conscious experience. So here, the large amount includes both temporal and spatial informations. So basically, the questions we need to think about when we use contrastive analysis is that how do we interpret or how do we investigate the single trial level differences? Because it's obvious that in single trial, we have one perception, and then that assumption is that that perception will be consistent, stable across the conscious perception conditions, but can be different. I mean, even though we presented the same stimuli, our perception can slightly change, but this contrastive analysis takes average across the trials in the same condition, conscious perception condition, for example, and then ignore these kind of differences. And also, when we use contrastive analysis, the identified neural correlates of consciousness can be confounded. For example, the neural processes that is related to a post-perceptual some component like reporting. That kind of activity, so-called consequences of NCC, can be also mistakenly identified as an NCC. So we need to be care about that. Of course, again, it has been already 10 years since this paper has published. There are several approaches to address that, but still we need to think about that. This paper is saying that we can address this issue by using a multivariate decoding analysis. And the reason is that even though the first of all, when we just simply take average across trials in this conscious condition and unconscious condition, this NCC consequences, tends to be, the difference is huge compared to other component. So even if in some conscious conditions, you do not have that consequences component, it's still kind of, detect the differences between conscious versus unconscious conditions. So it's more likely to mistakenly identify that component as NCC. But using multivariate decoding analysis, we can avoid that because these, for example, in some conscious conditions, or where you are conscious, be aware of that stimuli, you will not make report of that, which means that in that conditions, NCC consequences should not be included. But by taking average, that will be kind of canceled out and then still be considered as an NCC. But by using decoding analysis, in a sense, we can not ignore, but put less weight on these temporal time window, and we can reduce the contribution of these time windows so that we can correctly detect NCCs. Sorry, I kind of repeating the same thing, but yeah, this is the kind of what they are saying. So by using this decoding analysis, we can avoid these confounding factors, and also they are pointing out that this decoding approach is much easy to interpret the data, because by comparing just differences in amplitude, we don't know what it means, right? Because let's say 10 microvolt bigger or larger in conscious condition than unconscious condition, but what does it mean? It's very difficult to interpret. But by using this decoding approach, for example, we have 90% decoding accuracy, meaning that these patterns, activity patterns are, just present in conscious condition, but not in unconscious condition, something like that. So the interpretation is much easy. But yeah, anyway, so I will wrap up this summary here. Basically, they're saying that multivariate decoding approach can be useful in consciousness research. Sorry, I think, yeah, my explanation of the NCC consequences and NCC prayer can be kind of messed up.
No, I get the central idea you're trying to express. Thank you for the summary. I think what you're trying to say is you will have this NCC prerequisite and NCC consequence kind of happening at the same time with the NCC itself in some of the trial, but not other trials when the participant have conscious perception. The problem is that with univariate analysis, they average across all the conscious perception trials. And as a result, these NCC prerequisite and NCC consequence could also emerge as, significant when you average them. They on average, they may have a big effect. Well, that's because in some trials, they're like, boom, and then in some other trials, they are like silent. When you average them, they still have a good effect. But what multivariate decoding is really good compared to univariate is that it does not average across trials, but it looks for consistent predictors or consistent signatures that are present in all trials. So in this case, these prerequisite and the consequence, when they go on and off in this condition, they become less consistent according to the multivariate model.
Yeah.
And multivariate model will instead consider the one that is consistent across trial as, this is the NCC kind of situation, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Although
Thank you for the clarification. Yes, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, when you when we try to do a summary like in this kind of linear story way, it's always very hard. And it's like halfway through and you're like, oh, I forgot to say something before, and then you have to go back, and that's like the worst feeling.
Yeah. I don't know why, but this time I kind of explained the same thing 3 times or something. I think.
Really?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, the paper did the same thing.
Okay. Yeah. If so, then.
Yeah, I think they say something very similar in a few sections. I thought they're over it, and they are not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And, yeah.
Thank you for the follow-up clarification. Then we can start discussions now. Any comments? Yeah.
Yes. So I think this kind of proposition sounds really good if the multivariate decoding does give you very high classification accuracy, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And if your studies are all 80%, like they say, oh, one study even achieved 95 or 85, I don't remember exactly. If that is the situation that happens to all studies that use this kind of method, then I would say a really good method for detecting NCC. But I want to know in general, what is the classification accuracy look like in consciousness studies? If you say all that, but then you have a classification accuracy of 60%, it's very hard to interpret, right? What the 60% means.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't know. So I recently start to, look for these, decoding paper in consciousness research. So I don't know what is the kind of average accuracy, classification accuracy across studies, but yeah, according to this paper, the average in some brain regions, in some study, the accuracy is almost like 90% or sometimes 80, which is really, good compared to other studies. Yeah. And one thing is that, I misunderstand, but I don't know what is the difference between univariate versus contrastive analysis. Sometimes they, compare the univariate analysis versus a multivariate analysis. But in other case, they compare multivariate analysis and contrastive analysis. So my understanding is that, or univariate analysis decoding is the same as the contrastive analysis. I don't think it's same, but I think in some section there, the comparison or different section compare different, approach, although it's always with respect to multivariate decoding. So that part was a little bit unclear, but I still, I still agree that multivariate decoding can be useful.
I guess I also don't fully understand that part really. I didn't even notice. I thought they were just using univariate and contrastive the two words interchangeably because they wanted to mean the same thing. But now that you mention it, did they only start to mention the term univariate after addressing, after talking about the recent developments in contrastive analysis, as in univariate analysis is a similar but extended version of the traditional contrastive method. Something like that. So the traditional ones could be just not taking into account, like not even considering that the NCC prerequisite and NCC consequence exist. Just make people aware or unaware, and then you see which region of the brain is more lighted up when you're aware compared to when you're unaware. So that's the contrastive. And then the univariate is that, we actually have NCC prerequisite and NCC consequence. And what we'll do is we independently manipulate the conditions of the NCC prerequisite and NCC consequence. And then we can single out this NCC alone or something like that. So that's the univariate. But then univariate could be an umbrella term to cover anything, before multivariate. Maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, that part just was not sure, because if univariate decoding performed well, like again 80-90% decoding, and here univariate is single brain region or single electrode and single time point, I don't think it's I think it's very difficult to achieve that high level decoding accuracy with that univariate single brain channel, single time point. But still, if the accuracy is high, then I think we can basically say the same thing as in as in multivariate analysis, because, for example, we have high decoding accuracy, these brain regions, and this time point, let's say 10 milliseconds after the stimulus onset. But after, by using the data after, let's say 200 millisecond data, and then the accuracy dropped to the chance level, then we can say that, okay, that means that something going on this brain region and this time point, 100 milliseconds. So, but we don't, input the temporal and spatial data to the,
the searchlight, is it called? Is it the searchlight method?
No, I don't think so.
I see.
Yes, searchlight is like, my understanding is we don't have any idea where is the important, but by doing some, analysis like a filtering, then we can identify, okay, this region is something important for some processing or something. So yeah, but anyway, that's just, again, my, question is not so major, just a minor point. So I still agree that this decoding analysis will be useful or much easy to interpret. And yeah,
I actually have a question related to this point. So here, my understanding is that with multivariate decoding, the researcher decides what data to be included in the analysis. Like you don't input all regions, like all the channels there at once, right?
Yeah.
You still define the regions of interest beforehand, right? So if you want to look at the role of a region, let's say you can do something like, what's the classification accuracy with the data set that only that includes this region versus when we don't. But the problem is that at some point of the paper, they said that when we compare the classification accuracy across different regions, we need to be cautious because many different factors in the brain signal can influence the classification accuracy, although not being anything to do with the relation of interest itself. Let's say amplitude of the signal. So what I was thinking is that with this kind of analysis, and you need to have a very strong motivation to, first I define these regions must be relevant. And it seems that there isn't much room for you to do stuff like, can I try whether this region works or not?
So first, I think you don't need to specify the brain region because in the the discussion about NCC consequence versus NCC and NCC prerequisite, they mentioned that the time window, early time window from 0 millisecond to 100 millisecond, for example, if these time window is less relevant, for example, to NCC, then we can reduce the contribution of this time window by assigning low weights. I think that's how they explain in the paper, and we can apply the same thing to the spatial region. For example, this region, the occipital, is important, so we increase the contribution of that area. On the other hand, this temporal or frontal is less important. Therefore, we reduce the weight or something like that. That kind of, approach can be.
Reducing the weight as in the model itself will reduce the weight as when it estimates, when you feed the model, the weight for those regions will be reduced because the activity in those regions do not have strong explanatory power, or do not differentiate between conditions, or you predefine to some extent the weights before you enter the data into the model.
Yeah, I think that you can use some kind of algorithm. And also, again, this is something like a satellite. So without any, assumption beforehand, we can just do or let the algorithm do whatever they want and then find which region is more important than the others. And that can be investigated by looking at weights. So this decoder consider these regions important. So use that information than the other, the data from the other regions, something like that. It's fully, automatic, although you need to specify some algorithm. So that kind of approach can be possible, I think. Yeah. So I'm not sure, this paper, explains several example studies saying this paper says we can achieve this level of performance from these regions, but not from this region, something like that. I'm not sure how each paper, do the classification or analysis, but, we can several approach. Of course, as you said, we can, predetermine which area is important and consider or include the data from that regions. But at the same time, we can just use all the data, and then after that start looking at which area is important, and then after that we can test that. We have no idea first, so we can just use the algorithm, and then this algorithm say this region seems important. So next time we can focus on this data or this brain region, and then test whether that is consistent across, I don't know, participants, paradigm. That kind of generalizability this paper mentioned, it's important to check.
I see.
So yeah, generalizability, this is important, but yeah, it's very important. So yeah, for example, like the generalizability. So whether one, result from one experimental paradigm can be useful to predict the result for another, different paradigm, which is also about the NCC, then we can say, oh, if that predict is really high, then we can say, okay, this will be related to NCC, or this brain activity, or this brain region, this time window is important for conscious perception, something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure about across participants.
So like estimate the model from one participant and then test it on the other participant.
Yeah, if we can do that, that would be really great. But at the same time, we need to think about the difference in terms of the brain structure across participants. Of course, of course, we are the same, species, so we should, share some, anatomy to some extent. But of course, there are some individual differences. So,
Or you can try it at multiple different participants, estimate it at one participant, and then just test it on like 10 different participants and see like the average classification accuracy, or like 20. And I mean, of course, there will be very like fluctuations in how similar or different in terms of brain structure, but overall, there should be.
yeah. Oh, yeah. So maybe, the same, the people from the same family member can achieve high, accuracy, maybe.
Well, yeah, they're genetically related or something like that, right?
Yeah, and also, they will be, spend the same time, or almost the same, time in the same environment. I guess, the same house, and then same area.
Or like same class in school, because you also, for kids, they spend a lot of time in school.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Something like
so yeah, I'm not sure how, how much impact that kind of, external environment will have on the brain activities. But maybe it's interesting to see that. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. But again, recently I've been thinking about this kind of, decoding approach, and I really like this paper. Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. So you have any comments, question?
I don't have any other comments.
Okay. Then shall we finish? Okay, then see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.